Welcome to another episode of our video series of the personal transformation and self-knowledge. It's always so fascinating to get into these foundational ideas with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. And I'm really looking forward to today's conversation.
Hey, too.
We're moving from the stage of, thinking and planning to the moment of action. And that's where things get thrilling.
Absolutely. So for everyone following along, we're on this 8-step journey of human change. We've set the foundation. Step 1 was intention. That's the choice, the decision to even start. Then step 2 was effort. The grind, really, the continuous struggle, building that routine.
Right. Intention is the map and effort is the vehicle. But today, we get to step 3, courage.
The leap.
The leap. This is the moment that makes all that effort mean something. It's where practice turns into a real, tangible outcome.
I have to ask, why isn't courage step 1? It feels pretty courageous just to decide you're going to change your life, to walk away from what's comfortable.
That's a really sharp point. And you're right, that does take a kind of bravery.
Yeah.
But it's an internal bravery. The courage we're talking about here in step 3 is applied courage.
Okay, what's the difference?
Well, it's the difference between deciding you want to cross a river, that's intention, and then spending months training to swim. That's effort.
Got it.
Courage is when you're standing on the riverbank, the water is rushing, and you actually jump in.
That distinction is so important. So let's break down that jump, because I think most people get courage wrong. They think it's about being fearless.
Exactly. And that common idea is, well, it's just not right.
So what is it?
If you look at the roots of the word, historically it's about movement. It literally means something like to leap over a chasm.
A gap.
A huge gap, yeah. Imagine you're on your path, your routine, your effort, and you hit an obstacle. You can't just step over. You need a sprint, a jump, a real push.
Something that's not part of the normal routine with real consequences.
Precisely. And that gets us to the paradox of courage. To make that leap, you first have to see the danger. You have to see how wide the chasm is. You have to understand that you could fall.
So fear has to be there.
Fear is a prerequisite. Courage is the decision to act in the presence of fear. If there's no risk, you don't need courage. You just need to take a step.
The English root is interesting too, right? It comes from cor, the Latin for heart.
Yes, which suggests it's not just a cold, logical calculation.
It's the feeling.
It's that deep gut feeling that says, okay, let's go, do it. It's where that raw feeling meets your conscious decision to act.
And that's the point where every instinct in your body is probably screaming, stop, danger.
But you move forward anyway.
Okay, so that brings us straight to the brain, to the wiring. If it's just a decision, why is it so incredibly hard to make? Why do we freeze?
We have to look at the mechanics, what's happening in that split second. For a long time, this was all abstract, but in the last, say, decade, neuroscientists like Andrew Huberman and others have actually mapped out what they call the courage circuit.
So this is based on, like, fMRI scans and seeing what parts of the brain light up.
Exactly, tracking blood flow in real time. It shows us which pathways are competing when you face a risk.
So let's walk through the basic function. The brain gets input from our senses, processes it, and then creates an output, an action.
Or a non-action. And the absolute key to this whole process is a part of the brain called the thalamus.
The thalamus.
Think of it as the central station, the main switchboard. All sensory information, everything you see, hear, feel, it goes there first. The thalamus's job is to route that data to the right place.
To the right department for processing.
Yes, but when the information is urgent or risky, like seeing that chasm, the thalamus has to make a binary choice. It becomes a switch. This is the courage switch.
And it can go one of two ways, avoidance or action.
Pathway A is the default. It's the path of least resistance, evolutionarily speaking. It sends the signal straight to the amygdala.
The stress center, I've heard of that.
The brain's ancient alarm system. And that immediately triggers fight, flight, or freeze. Your heart pounds, you get tunnel vision. The outcome is stress, inaction, running away. That's retreating from the gorge.
Okay, so what's pathway B? The one we want.
Pathway B sends that same scary signal, but it routes it forward to the prefrontal cortex, the PFC. That's the part right behind your forehead.
The rational brain.
The CEO of the brain, yeah. It handles planning, impulse control, thinking through consequences. When the signal goes there, the outcome is a measured, thought-out step forward, even with the fear.
So that one switch determines if you panic or if you plan.
That is the whole game. It's stress mode versus action mode.
Wow. That's a huge distinction. So if we know this is the mechanism, how do we train that switch? How do we get it to choose the PFC over the amygdala when everything is screaming danger?
We are wired to flee. That's our survival instinct. But, and this is the basis of both are all personal growth, we have something called synaptic plasticity.
Use it or lose it.
Basically, yeah. We've known this since the early 2000s. The more you use a neural circuit, the stronger and faster it gets. The less you use it, the weaker it becomes. It atrophies.
And that gets us into what you call the amygdala trap.
It's the most common trap there is.
Yeah.
Every single time you back down, every time you procrastinate that hard conversation, every time you tell yourself, oh, I might fail, or what will people think?
You're sending traffic down that amygdala highway.
You're paving it. You're making it a super highway, thick and fast and efficient. And meanwhile, the other path, the action path to the PFC, it gets overgrown. It turns into a little dirt track.
So it gets harder and harder to choose action.
Exactly. It becomes biologically easier to choose avoidance. That's why procrastination can feel so impossible to break.
Yeah.
Your brain has made that the default low-energy option.
So avoiding that one difficult email isn't just about that one email.
No, you're literally strengthening the avoidance muscle for the next time and the time after that.
Okay, so the whole point of the first two steps, intention and effort, is actually to rewire the circuit.
That's the powerful synthesis. Courage isn't one big heroic moment out of nowhere. It's the final result of thousands of tiny decisions to use the PFC pathway.
All that continuous effort is. It's like circuit training for the brain.
It is. You're using small, low-stakes actions to deliberately activate the PFC circuits. You're building muscle memory for being bold. So when the really big, risky moment comes...
The pathway is already there. It's paved.
It's ready to go. The courageous step feels more fluid, more possible, because you've trained for it.
So this is the key thing for you, the listener, to really hear. Courage is not a personality trait. It is a developable skill that is under your conscious control.
It's not for special people. It is a circuit you build, choice by choice, day by day.
And that ability, that's uniquely human, isn't it?
It seems to be. Animals are, wired for fear. They only take big risks for immediate survival, food, mating, or if they're forced to. Their wiring is reactive.
But we can do it for an idea, for growth.
Humans can use these circuits we've built to push past fundamental risks, even the risk of death, for an ideal. We can step into the unknown on purpose because we've trained our thalamus to favor the PFC.
And when you do that, when you take that step, life is never quite the same after, is it?
It can't be. That's the shared quality of every courageous act. You have done something your biology told you was impossible.
You become a new version of yourself.
A new self, ready for a new level of experience. You've completed that step of the transformation.
So as you continue on your own journey, it's really a practice of neural discipline.
It is. And maybe a final thought to leave you with is this. If courage is simply making a decision to act when fear is there, what small, low-stakes fear are you letting run your amygdala right now? Maybe it's an email you haven't sent, a project you haven't started, a difficult conversation you're avoiding. What's one tiny action you could take right now to start strengthening that PFC circuit?
Start small.
Start small and just train the switch.